For 6 years, I watched him love and raise a child that wasn't his. He was there for her first steps, her first word, every school recital. He kissed her goodnight like she was his whole world. Because to him, she was. And I let him believe that lie. I told myself it didn't matter, that it was just one mistake, one night. Just one single night to myself before I devoted myself to this man for a lifetime. But the truth always finds a way out. And when it did, I lost everything. Met Lucas when I wasn't looking for anyone. I know that sounds like something people just say, but it's true. I was halfway through grad school, barely scraping by on a part-time job at a little used bookstore, constantly tired, constantly chasing the next paper or project. I didn't have time for romance, let alone the kind that rewrites your life. He walked in on a rainy Thursday afternoon. His jacket was soaked, his hair a little messy, and he had the kind of easy smile that made you feel like you'd known him for years. He was holding a ruined copy of The Fault in Our Stars and said, half laughing, that his roommate had cried over it and spilled wine on the pages. I didn't believe that story for a second, but I played along. He made me laugh, and for the first time that day, I wasn't thinking about deadlines. It took him 2 more visits before he asked me to coffee. Just coffee. No pressure. That was Lucas. Gentle, sincere, never the type to force a moment. And when I said yes, I wasn't expecting anything. I thought it would be simple, but something about him stuck. We fell for each other faster than I expected. He made everything feel easy, natural. We didn't play games or hide behind egos. When he said he liked me, he meant it. When he asked how my day was, he listened. He remembered the smallest details, how I liked my tea, what authors I avoided, which lecture days I dreaded. It felt safe, solid. He met my parents 6 months in. My mom was skeptical. She always is. But Lucas won her over. He helped my dad set up the grill, wash dishes after dinner, asked about their garden like he genuinely cared. My brother tried to be the overprotective sibling and grill him, but Lucas didn't flinch. He answered every question honestly, without posturing. He was just good. We got married a 1.5 years later. Backyard wedding, nothing flashy. String lights, tacos, my best friend officiating. Lucas cried when I walked down the aisle. He held my hands like he was anchoring himself. When he said his vows, my father actually wiped a tear from his eye. Something I'd never seen before. It should have been perfect. And for a while, it really was. Our first year was full of late-night takeout, arguments over laundry, and Sunday, morning pancakes. He'd kiss my forehead before work every single day. He'd bring home flowers on random Tuesdays. He read books out loud to me when I was too stressed to fall asleep. It wasn't flashy, but it was real, steady, whole. Sounds perfect, right? It wasn't. I wouldn't be here if it was. A month before Lucas proposed, we'd gotten into a bad argument. Not over anything earth-shattering. Just one of those stupid, exhausting fights where pride talks louder than love. We were at a friend's engagement party, and I made a sarcastic comment about how Lucas wouldn't know romance if it hit him in the face. It was meant to be a joke, but it hit wrong. He pulled me aside, tense, asked why I always made digs when things were going well. I snapped back, accused him of being too sensitive. He said I never appreciated anything he did. I told him maybe I didn't have a reason to. He left for the night, don't know where he went. Didn't text, didn't call. I spiraled, thought we were done, thought I'd ruined it. So I went to a party I had no business being at. It was thrown by an old college friend, Natalie, the kind of friend who always knew where the loudest music and the strongest drinks were. She texted me that morning, something casual. Last-minute thing at Jake's tonight. You should come, blow off steam. I almost said no. I typed out a polite decline 3 times. But then I thought about Lucas not calling. About the silence. about how quick he was to leave. So I said yes. I didn't even bother dressing up. Threw on jeans, a loose sweater. Didn't care. I told myself I'd only stay for an hour, just enough to get out of my own head. But the second I walked in, I knew I'd made a mistake. The music was too loud, the lights too dim, and I didn't recognize half the faces. People already half drunk, red cups everywhere. It smelled like cheap beer and perfume and bad choices. Natalie met me at the door and immediately noticed something was off. She hugged me and pulled back. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. "You sure?" she pressed. I said I'm fine. A little too sharp. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't believe me. We found a spot near the kitchen and she poured me a drink, vodka and soda, heavy on the vodka. I tossed it back faster than I should have. She started asking questions about Lucas, about what happened. I brushed her off. She didn't let up. Eventually I snapped. He walked out. Again. I'm done with it. I deserve better. Natalie looked at me like she wanted to argue, but she held her tongue. She just poured another drink. By the time I met him, I was on my third, or maybe fourth. He was tall, dark-haired, wearing a denim jacket and an arrogant kind of smirk. I didn't even catch his name at first. He wasn't someone I'd ever normally be drawn to. But that night, I wasn't myself. He leaned against the fridge, made some joke about my drink disappearing too fast. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I was buzzing, numb, and wanted to feel something sharp again. Natalie pulled me aside a few minutes later. "You need to slow down. This isn't you." I remember rolling my eyes. "What do you care?" "Because you're hurting. And this isn't going to help." I looked her dead in the eye and said something I regret to this day. "Lucas is gone. I dumped him. I'm better without him." She blinked, stunned. "That's not true. And you know, it." I walked away before she could say more. The guy, I think his name started with a C, found me again near the back hallway. We talked. I laughed. He touched my arm. I didn't stop him. It all moved too fast, or maybe just fast enough for the version of me that didn't care. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I stopped and thought about the man I loved. But I didn't. Not that night. I remember the taste of alcohol still on my breath, the way he kissed me like we were daring each other to forget. We stumbled into the guest bedroom, still half laughing, like it was just a game. The door closed, behind us. I let it. It wasn't passionate, it wasn't emotional. It was messy, sloppy, hollow. I barely even looked at him. I left before sunrise, shoes in hand, jacket forgotten. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't want to. I scrubbed myself from head to toe for like 5 times at least, all the while bawling, my eyes out in the shower. My knees gave out at one point and I just sat there on the tile, shaking. I hated myself. Hated what I'd done. Who I'd become in one reckless night. And when the water finally turned cold, I stayed. Because part of me felt like I deserved to freeze. And then, Lucas called. He apologized. Said he'd overreacted. That he hated how we left things. That he loved me. He wanted to talk. To fix it. And I, still sick from the night before, told him yes. I told him I loved him too. I never mentioned what I'd done. I convinced myself it didn't matter. I buried it so. Deep I thought I'd never have to face it again. But secrets like that, they rot, and no matter how deep you bury them, they always find a way back to the surface. But time has its way of healing, of making you forget. Months passed. The wedding happened. A few weeks after that, I found out I was pregnant. Lucas was over the moon. He picked me up and spun me around when I told him. He cried in the middle of the kitchen, hands trembling, heart wide open. He kissed my stomach, called the baby Peanut, and read every parenting book he could get his hands on. He sang to my belly, painted the nursery himself. He even built the crib by hand. He was already in love. And that small voice in my head, the one I'd been silencing for months, started to whisper again. What if she isn't his? I did the math. I told myself it was fine. The dates lined up well enough. Besides, she looked like him. Everyone said so. She has Lucas's eyes, my mom would say. She's got that same smile. And I clung to those words like a lifeline. I needed them to be true. I needed to believe it. Because Lucas, he was everything. He was the kind of man who left work early for doctor's appointments, who held my hand through contractions, who cried when he held her for the first time, who stayed up all night just to watch her sleep. She called him Daddy before she even turned 2, and every time she did, I felt a sharp sting of guilt, like I was robbing him of something sacred. But I kept quiet. I told myself it didn't matter anymore, that we were happy, that secrets sometimes were better left buried, until they weren't, because secrets have teeth, and eventually they bite. The years passed quietly, almost too quietly. Lucas was everything I could have ever wished for in a husband and father. He was present, loving, patient, the kind of man who made me believe in forever. And every time he held our daughter, Ellie, I felt a stab of gratitude mixed with a secret shame I kept buried deep. Ellie grew up healthy, bright, and full of life. Lucas was the one who took her to her first day of school, who cheered the loudest at every recital, who kissed her scraped knees better, and tucked her in at night with the same tenderness as a biological father. To the outside world, we were the perfect family. And for a while, I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, the secret didn't matter. But life has a way of unraveling the best-laid lies. The night Ellie woke up, something felt wrong the moment she started crying. It wasn't her usual whimper or fuss. It was raw, urgent. When I rushed into her room, she was gasping, her small chest heaving like she couldn't catch a breath. Panic slammed through me like a tidal wave. "Lucas, call 911, I shouted, my voice cracking. He was already on his phone, calm but his hands shaking just a little. We bundled Ellie up and rushed to the car, the cold air hitting our faces as we sped toward the emergency room. Inside the hospital, everything moved in a blur. The sterile smell, the bright fluorescent lights, nurses and doctors appearing like ghosts. Voices calm but clinical. They took Ellie from us, hooked her up to monitors, and started running tests. Lucas never left her side. He held her tiny hand, whispered soothing words, kissed her forehead over and over like he was trying to imprint every moment in his memory. Watching him, I felt a crushing mix of love and guilt. Hours passed. The doctors explained they suspected a blood disorder and needed a transfusion fast. They asked Lucas to donate blood. He didn't hesitate, rolling up his sleeve without a word, even though I could see the worry tightening his jaw. When the nurses took his blood, I thought that was the worst part. But then, they pulled him aside. The doctor's face was unreadable when he told us, "Lucas, the blood you donated isn't a match." Those words hit me harder than any blow. Lucas's face went pale. For a moment, he just stared at the doctor, disbelief flickering in his eyes. I felt tears sting as the doctor continued, his voice gentle but firm. "This isn't just a simple mismatch. We'll need to run a paternity test to understand what's going on." A cold numbness spread through me. I wanted to run away, to disappear, but I was rooted to the spot, watching the man who had been Ellie's father for 6 years shatter before my eyes. Lucas turned to me, pain and confusion battling behind his steady gaze. "What does this mean?" he asked quietly. I don't know," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry." In that sterile hospital room, Surrounded by beeping machines and the weight of a secret I'd carried for years, everything I thought was solid crumbled. The man who loved Ellie as his own was being told, in the coldest terms, that blood didn't bind them after all. And I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. Lucas sat beside me in the cold, sterile hospital waiting room, the crumpled paternity test report clenched tightly in his hand. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a dull glare on the beige walls. Around us, the faint hum of machines and distant voices seemed miles away, like sounds from a world we no longer belonged to. Our world had shattered, and nothing felt certain anymore. I stared down at the floor, my hands twisting nervously in my lap, tears stinging my eyes. I wanted to look at him, to search his face for understanding or anger, or maybe just a sliver of hope. But I was too scared. Instead, words tumbled out of me, desperate and trembling. "This can't be right," I said, voice cracking. "There has to be some kind of mistake. Maybe the lab mixed up the samples or the paperwork got switched. It happens all the time. Hospitals aren't perfect. They said it wasn't a 100% accurate, but..." "Stop," Lucas said quietly. But firmly, his eyes locked on mine. "Please," he whispered, the tired and heartbreak evident in his voice. I flinched, but the panic inside me wouldn't let up. "I'm not making excuses," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I don't know how this happened. Maybe I miscalculated the dates. Or maybe something else. I don't know. I'm terrified, Lucas. You don't understand what this means. For me, for you, for her." He sat back, running a tired hand through his hair. His knuckles were white where he gripped the paper, but he said nothing. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "I stayed here all night," he finally said, voice low. "With her, watching her breathe, thinking about what it means if she's not my daughter, what that does to everything." I swallowed hard, my throat closing up. The urge to confess welled inside me, but fear pinned my tongue. Instead, I babbled on, trying to fill the unbearable stillness with anything. "We've built a life, Lucas. A family. Doesn't that mean something? Doesn't that make it real? I thought love was more than biology. I thought you believed that too." His eyes searched mine, full of pain and disbelief. But he didn't answer. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. "I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry." He stood slowly, still holding the test results, and moved toward the window overlooking the hospital courtyard. The early morning light broke through the heavy gray clouds, but the brightness couldn't touch the hollow ache inside the room. I sat there, feeling smaller than ever, swallowed by the silence growing heavier with every passing second. The truth clawed at me from the inside, but I couldn't speak it. Not yet. Lucas didn't say it, but I knew what we were both thinking. What now? After a few tense days in the hospital, our daughter's condition finally began to improve. The doctors said she was strong, that the worst was behind us. When we finally walked out of those sliding glass doors and into the fresh air, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that she was healing, dread for what still lay ahead between Lucas and me. Lucas was quiet, too quiet. He didn't speak much during the drive home. He didn't ask questions. He didn't lash out. He just stared straight ahead like the weight of what he'd learned was pressing down on him, crushing any words before they could even form. At home, the silence stretched like a living thing. He moved through the house like a ghost, mechanically, barely acknowledging me or our daughter. Nights grew darker, lonelier, and soon, the quiet was replaced by the sound of bottles opening and the bitter tang of whiskey. He didn't say he was drinking. He didn't tell me why. But every evening, I'd find him in the same spot, slumped on the living room floor, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, eyes vacant, shoulders heavy with unspoken pain. I stayed silent at first, hoping he'd come back to me, to us, but the silence twisted into something unbearable. One evening, I came home early from work. The house smelled of stale alcohol and regret. I found him exactly where I feared, sprawled on the floor, a half-empty bottle beside him, glass in hand, staring at nothing. My chest tightened. I sank down beside him, tears spilling uncontrollably. "Lucas, please," I whispered, voice breaking. "Look at me. Please." He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The walls I'd built crumbled. "I'll tell you everything. Please, baby." I sobbed. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for this to happen." I took a shaky breath and poured it all out. The party, the drinks, the kiss. The night I lost myself and betrayed everything we had. How scared I was to tell him. How I buried it deep inside, hoping it would never come up. I didn't think it mattered anymore, I confessed between sobs. But it does. I was wrong. I was so wrong. He just kept staring. No words, no anger, no comfort. Just silence. And that silence felt heavier than any accusation. For the first time, the truth was out in the open. But whether it would heal or destroy us, I had no idea. Lucas left a week later. No grand goodbye, just quiet packing and a lingering look at the daughter he loved with all his heart. Then, the door closed behind him. He filed for divorce soon after. It was painful, but he couldn't stay married under this weight of betrayal and lies. He made it clear, though, their daughter was still his world. He wasn't walking away from her, not ever. He stayed in contact, called regularly, visited when he could. Not for me. Never again for me. For my daughter. Our daughter. To him, she was still his little girl, no matter what biology said. His love for her didn't falter. He just couldn't love me anymore. Ellie is still too young to understand fully. She knows still. Just doesn't question it yet. I don't know what I'll tell her when she finally asks why her dad isn't always home. Sometimes she sets a plate for him at dinner, even when I've already told her he won't be eating with us. She doesn't cry, just looks up at me all confused. She still draws him in her crayon family pictures, always smiling, always holding her hand. And every time I see one, it's like a quiet knife to the chest. Whispers started. Family, friends, even strangers passing judgment. Some tried to understand, some didn't. I found myself defending the indefensible, blaming everything else in my life besides myself for what happened. How I never meant to destroy what we had. It didn't matter. Some people believed me, but others didn't. I became a cautionary tale, the woman who ruined a perfect family. I lost more than a husband. I lost the life I thought I deserved. And I'm left trying to pick up the pieces, haunted by what I did and what I lost. Sometimes, when I'm left at the house all to myself, I wonder if Lucas ever thinks about me, ever considers taking me back, if he ever imagines what it might have been like to forgive, to try again. But then, that night crashes back into my mind. The night I threw everything away. The night I broke the trust that could never be rebuilt. And just like that, the hope fades, swallowed by the weight of my own mistakes.